Let's talk about patch or partial update in Spring REST API. We're also going to take a look at an example of the same. But first, let us try to understand the difference between patch and put. Oftentimes people get confused between these two and they don't know when to use what. So let us try to understand it with a real-world example. Say that you wanted to manufacture a product. The first obvious thing that you would do is you would order all the machinery required to manufacture the product from the supplier. Let's say that this is the machine that you had ordered and you found out that one of the parts is not functioning well. Now, would it be efficient if you ask the supplier to replace the entire unit and bear the shipping cost again? Or would it be nice if you ask the supplier to replace this specific part which is affected? Obviously the second option, right? That's the basic difference between patch and put. So far in our previous examples, when you're trying to perform the put operation, we're performing updation of the resource, but behind the scenes we're actually replacing the entire record. But whereas with the patch, what we're going to do is that we'll update only a particular field which requires updation. If you want to understand the difference in more technical fashion, assume that you have JSON with a person bank details. So you'd have the balance, you'd have his age, name, gender, company, etc. Now let's say that you want to update the age of that person. If you use the put method, you'd have to send this entire JSON payload just to replace one particular field. But with patch, you can only send the field where you need updation. You don't have to send the entire JSON. What's the advantage here? The obvious advantage here is you would be able to save the bandwidth because you don't have to send the entire JSON payload and you're sending only a specific field where you require updation. Let's take a look at an example of the same. What we have here is our previous CRUD example. So we have get mapping, post mapping, put mapping, and delete mapping to perform CRUD operations. Now we have additional method which is patch mapping to perform partial updation. This method is going to accept a couple of parameters, the first of which is the path variable that we'll be sending from the client, which is the identifier. This will help us identify a specific product in the database. The second parameter is a list of key value pairs, which is basically a map. The key would correspond to a particular field of the product, and the value is the value that you want to replace for that particular field. What we have here is core Java. I'm trying to use the reflection API in order to replace the fields for the fetched product. And I assume that I don't have to walk you through this core Java stuff. You can pause the video and take a look at this code. If you have any questions, you can ask me. Finally, what we're trying to do is we're trying to just simply update that particular product with the final product object that we create. Let's try to launch our application and see it working. I'm going to go to the Postman client. I've cleaned up everything just so that you'll have a fresh environment to work on. The first thing that I'm going to do is to retrieve list of products available. So localhost 8080 and I believe it's get products. I'm going to just simply copy this and send. So here are the list of products. Let me fetch a specific product, which is going to be this. All right. Now let's say that I want to perform partial update on this particular resource. Maybe I'd like to change the name to something else. Let me just copy this particular field. Let me switch the method to patch HTTP method. And inside body, I'm going to choose raw. And here I'm going to send only the fields where I need updation. In this case, I'm going to call it as new iPhone. Let's fire the request and see what's going to happen. So it has returned unsupported media type. Let's go to headers and change the content type to JSON and send the query again. And this time we got 200 OK, and if you try to retrieve the product once again, we should be seeing the name getting updated, and sure it is. I'm going to make this code available for you to download so that you can experiment with it. Hope it makes sense.